Welcome, welcome. So great to have you here tonight. We've got Mumsy in the house and Snow in the house and Chalet in the house. Woohoo! I'm glad you're all here, right on time for us to get started. Um, and we are going to talk about Apple River today. Um, I know we touched on it excuse, excuse me, yesterday. Trusty water. You can relate to Dr. House. Okay, because you're young. um, yeah. All right. So we watched the video. I thought what we would do, the easiest way to kind of have our discussion is by going through the closing arguments. And then we'll pause and make comments um, as that's going on. All right. Idaho review is all about stupid extensions and dates and stuff. Oh, the hearing that they had. Yeah. Or something. I'm unless there's like something really to be said. I'm not watching anything on Delphi or Idaho 4 when they're just saying the same thing over and over again. I've already heard it. I don't need to hear it again. You know. And so, I mean, if I've got something that I think I want to say that isn't being said, then I'll do a show. If I see something that looks like it's got a new angle or something, then I'll watch it. But just because it's Idaho 4 or Delphi, no, I'm I'm skipping because a lot of it's drama stuff about creators versus creators. Andy in the house. Andy in the house. All right. So, what I want to start with is making sure we're clear on who was there. All right. So, I've found this video. I have to give credit to Michelle After Dark that she had a thing. It was only about 20 minutes or no. I think it was Christina Randall. I apologize, Christina Randall. And then I shared her video as a community post. If you need a link to it, just look for my community post. And this screenshot was part of her. Well, it was in her video. I did not screenshot it. I looked through Google. I did a Google search until I found it. But obviously, it's like a news broadcast screenshot. Right. So let's be clear of who. Oh, that was your whole review of the hearing. Yeah, stupid extensions and dates and stuff. Okay, let's see who was on Apple River. There were actually 3 groups of tubers. What it says here as the Carlson group is the group that with Maddie and Ariel. Okay, the 2 women. This is a group of adults. I think they're one or 2 children of these adults as well, because I've heard it said that one of the men asked his son, "Go help him. He needs help," and then he got stabbed. Now, I don't know if that's Isaac who died or one of the other 4 people. Anyway, so that's one group. They're the ones that came up on the altercation already happening. Well, I'll call it an altercation. All right. They got involved after. All right. Here on the bottom is Nikolai Mew's group. I think this is him right here. They were a group of adults. One of his friends lost his cell phone, and that's why he went back alone. Or, I'm still not clear on downriver, upriver, and all of this. I can't figure that part out. But he left his group went over, it was looking through the river for the cell phone and came upon the group here called the Isaac group, which, as you can see, is 6 teenage boys. They were in high school. One thing that I don't think is said in the closing argument, so I'll mention it here. Isaac, who died, because they did an autopsy and everything, his blood alcohol content was 0.219. And according to his friends, Isaac was the most sober of all of them. And his blood alcohol was 0.219. We all know that's over the legal limit for driving in any state. So yes, you have these 6 boys. So when they talk about the females, they're talking about adults from this other group. And you'll even hear in the video, when Maddie first comes over and is saying, go, get your F and A away from here, whatever. They're like, who's that? Because they didn't know who Maddie was. So Maddie wasn't part of their group. I just want to say there were no girls in Isaac's group. It was 6 teenage boys. All right. So now let me see what you're saying. Oh, Queen's in the house. Woo! All right. So everyone said hello, got caught up. Thank you so much for reminding people to hit like. Thank you. Oh, and Chalet's got Talon in the house. There's, Chalet, I said that before I read it. Okay, so we are going to watch, let me change sharing this tab.
Senseless and horrific acts of violence. And all.
That's not very loud. Oh, I think it gets louder. Let me know if you guys can hear this. Okay, this is the prosecution. They go first, then the defense goes, and then the prosecution gets a rebuttal. That's how the closing arguments go.
All right. All Nikolai Mew had to do was walk away. All he had to do was walk away. That's what you've seen in this case.
He says, "What's up?"
You saw he told Lieutenant Hart, "They told me I can't run away." Obviously not true. Think about the result of his actions. Everything you've seen in this trial, the horrific injuries, the death of Isaac. Why didn't he just walk away?
So that's
his only explanation when testifying was, "I stood my ground. First of all, Wisconsin is not a stand your ground state.
Objection. Overruled.
I'll talk.
Okay, so I'm actually going to pause it here. Why didn't he walk away? All he said was, I had to stand my ground. That's not all he said. Just to make that clear. He did talk a lot about having his, his back at a certain time, when people were at his back at different points. There were times where no one was at his back, but there were times when people were. He did mention that. He mentioned, being surrounded by upwards of 10 people. And I think they say 13. The lawyers say 13 people. So this is he did say that, but that's not all he said. Okay.
Talk about that specifically from your jury instructions. Second, that's not true, as I'll show you. He didn't just stand his ground. I'm not going to defend the actions of the boys who testified. It was cruel what they were calling Nikolai. They shouldn't have been mocking him, calling him predator, raper. But their conduct did not justify what Nikolai did.
Possibly.
You heard from Alina, Isaac's mother, about her son Isaac. He was 17 years old when he was killed. He enjoyed golfing, spending time with friends. He recently started a new business, detailing cars. He was an honor student looking forward to going to college.
And enjoyed drinking with his buddies to the point of 0.219 blood alcohol level, and there's plenty of screenshots of him, enjoyed taunting people. Oh, let me see. Can we add bully to his resume? Sorry, parents. I know you're grieving for your son, but facts are facts. All 6 of them were bullies.
His death was senseless. One of the things defense said in the beginning of trial.
Wait, let me see. Andy's saying, okay, I have a problem with the phrase legal limit. It's for BAC, for how drunk. There is no legal limit for driving. 0 tolerance. Oh, yeah, by the way, they're under 18. So it's also a 0 tolerance for being under 18, right? I'm just mentioning the 0.219 is a very high alcohol level. I mean, most people are considered at some level of impaired at that point, right? But as teenagers, he just said he's 17. He just said it. He's 17. That's a zero tolerance. Yeah, they're bullies, Chalet says. No respect for elders to begin with. Of course. Okay, so let's continue.
Their opening was, they're glad there's a video. So are we. Without the video, Nikolai would have slipped away. The only reason he was apprehended was because law enforcement had that screenshot of him. The video doesn't fade with time. It's not biased, not influenced by alcohol. As I told you in the beginning of this case, the violent episode from the video is about 25 seconds, from the point he punches Madison until you see him walking off after stabbing 5 people.
Okay, so he just said 20-something seconds. Under 30 seconds is all 4 people were stabbed in under 30 seconds. He said the number, I didn't catch it, 20-something. So, I mean, that's quick. That's fast. There's not a lot of time for thinking. That, to me, says reaction. They were he was reacting to the situation. And, I'm sorry that the one guy got his disemboweled, and he has a horrible scar. I'm wondering if any of that is also, if any of the length of that is due to the surgery that he had, being in surgery. If maybe they had to widen things up, I don't know. Obviously, it was enough to be disemboweled, and but it's not like I don't know. I think the whole here's Mama Kitty. Say hi, Mama Kitty. He did that. It was one stab. The guy was leaning forward. There was motion. There was motion on both sides and then the other 2 in less than 30 seconds. Stab. So I don't know. The whole intent part is hard for me to grasp with that. Let me see what you guys are saying. There's a light brown bag of dog doo-doo, rings doorbell, runs to hide in bushes. Oh my gosh. Hey, kitty, it's tuna time. That's right, tuna time. They already had their tuna. I made sure they were taken care of before going live. Yeah, she just wants some love. She wants some mama time. We egged houses and later toilet papered houses, yes. Okay, back to Apple River.
Nikolai is not seen in that video for 8 to 9 seconds until the point you see him walking away. You don't see him stab Dante. Some of you may have wondered why we called Marion Davis. Certainly it wasn't for his eyewitness testimony.
Okay, that's funny. certainly not for his eyewitness testimony. This guy was horrible on the stand. So the guy he's referring to, and I believe they're going to show his video. So you've got the main video that everybody watches. There was a second video, and that's the guy he's talking about now. Because his phone was wet when he transferred the file, that was kind of corrupted a bit and blurry. But he captures one of the stabbings, but I have a comment when they put that video up on the screen. I have a comment. Anyway, this guy was a total horrible witness, and so this prosecutor over the 7 days of trial, he was paying attention to what people were saying, because people were saying, why did they call this guy? So he thought, well, if people are saying that, the jury's going to be thinking that, and he's trying to get ahead of it. Okay, you're doing your job. All right. But that's why he said, yeah. That short cracks me up. Which short? Which short? I have lots of shorts. Clean activity. Oh yeah, Mumsy's saying, yeah, clean activities, not acting like a pack of wolves. We watched him; he was cocky. Now, who are you saying was cocky? The guy that they were interviewing, the guy that took this video. Yeah. Oh, my cat and the tuna. All right, let's keep going.
But he took a video. He took a video that captured a different angle than Jawan's video. It's grainy, it's difficult to see, but you can see enough. And it shows Nikolai seeking Dante out and stabbing him when his group is in the opposite direction. Nikolai walks into a crowd of people, stabs Dante.
Okay, so he just said that the video shows him walking into the group of people and then stabbing someone. When they show the video, I'm going to challenge that.
Before I show you that video again, I need to provide some context from Jawan's video.
Take it off.
So these are obviously family members, victims, and such that are.
Clear the screen, please.
On this side of the galley.
So here at 2 minutes and 6 seconds, this is after Nikolai has stabbed the 4 people that you do see parts of on the video. He's standing next to Ariel. Ariel's there. Nikolai's not by himself.
I should get back to the video. They do. They will.
2 minutes, 8 seconds. That's the last you'll see of Nikolai until you see him walking off in this video. You see Dante or AJ, the boys running back to their tubes, and you see Larian filming in the background. Larian captured what Nikolai was doing at this point, even though this video didn't.
I'm gonna pause it for a second. I keep thinking, when I'm cooking, I keep thinking of doing cat versus bacon, cat versus chicken, cat versus hamburger.
And here, in a moment, you can see the edge of Dante's swim trunks on the right. You can see the light on top, the dark on bottom.
I don't know who that guy is in the glass.
At this point in Larian's video, Dante's just been stabbed.
Maybe it's like an older brother of the one that died or something. I don't know.
The next you see of Nikolai, he's walking off. You can see Dante in the background, holding his stomach, looking down at his wound. Take it down. Well, actually, you can keep it up for a second, sorry. And then for further context, you see Alex Bang running to Isaac.
Okay, so here we're going to see the video.
Let's see Larian's video. Okay, I have the screen. Remember, Nikolai admitted he walked up to Larian. He walked up to Dante and stabbed him. He admitted Dante was the last person he stabbed. Here you can see Nikolai, dark swim trunks, bigger build. On the right, you can see Dante, swim trunks, lighter on top, darker on bottom. You'll see Nikolai walk up to Dante and stab him in the chest.
Okay. So while he's here kind of on the edge, if you're in this river, you've already been knocked down. You've already had all this taunting. It's going to feel like you're being surrounded. You don't have, I think he mentioned this, just like you can't see behind you. He doesn't know if there's another person behind him. You know, you're going to be, I mean, you've just been hit in the face, held under the water. It's at that point, of course, you're fearing for your life. You're not just angry that they had been taunting you. Oh, they called me a meh, so I'm angry and I'm gonna get revenge. And the prosecution keeps saying, "Oh, look, he's smiling. He's smiling." And when they did their cross-examination of Nikolai, he said, "No, I'm not smiling. That's what I look like when I'm confused. I'm confused. I'm not smiling. I'm confused." Is he lying? I don't know, but that's what he said. All right. Let me see what you guys are saying. Waterboarding makes you feel like you're going to die. Yeah. I mean, we saw the guy jump on him, and in his own testimony, he said that he was face down in the water and someone was on his back. He doesn't know who it was, but they were holding him down. And we see that in the video, not in this video, but in the other video. All right, let's keep going.
You'll see Dante recoil from the stab. You see the boys on the right running to their tubes.
It feels like people are all around.
In the second here, you'll see Alex Bang. You'll zoom in on him as he runs to Isaac.
I want to mention the jury instructions are that they are not to look at this as from the point of view of any other person other than Nikolai. When they are considering a self-defense, which has been brought up, they must look at all the evidence and put together their perspective from the point of view of Nikolai. So when I'm saying I would feel this, as if I'm a jury member, not being biased about anything, but like if I was in that situation, I would be feeling this. This is probably my son. So give me a second. Hello? 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 I'm on a live stream right now. Can you wait like an hour? Will that be okay? Like an hour? Huh? Okay. Love you. Bye. So that's my son. Let me see what you're saying first. Line back with water going up your nose. Yeah. A horrible, horrible situation. So I'm going to play this while I send a message.
I'm going to show that again. So, a few things to note. There's nothing between Nikolai and Larian. He's not surrounded. His friend Ariel is there at this point. There's nothing to the left and behind Nikolai, except his group in the distance that you can't see on video. He walks away from those directions towards a group of people and stabs Dante in the chest, not standing his ground. He's seeking out Dante. That's retribution, not self-defense.
Okay. So if I'm surrounded by people that are attacking me, that they've surrounded me, taunting me, they've hit me in the ground, in my face, in my space. That's what he used those terms. They, like Maddie and Ariel were also in his face, they were putting their hands on him. Now, maybe they didn't think they were being violent by just grabbing someone's shoulder and, to like push them back. It's not hitting someone, right? So maybe they felt that that was an acceptable thing to do. But from his perspective, once somebody touched his skin, he felt threatened. And he had a pocket knife. He got it out when he was down in the water. He had it with him when Maddie and Ariel were standing next to him. As soon as they put their hands on him, up goes his hand. Stabs them. Sorry, I would be fearing for my life too. And he keeps using the word females. He never calls them women. Because he's trying to make it all like, oh, there were all these innocent kids. They were so tiny. They weighed less than him. We'll see. No. He didn't have his friend. Wait. No. Oh, okay. Let me clarify this. His friend asked him to, like on the phone before they got to the river. Hey, Nikolai, we're going to be using rope to tie the tubes together. So can you bring your pocket knife? Yeah, sure, buddy. No problem. Grabs his pocket knife. So yes, his friend asked him to bring the pocket knife, but it just sounded like you meant during the altercation, the friend handed him the knife. So I just wanted to clarify that. But I see you. That's probably what you meant, what I just said. Yeah, to cut stuff, not people. Correct. It's more specifically when you're tying up the tubes and then you got to cut the end, like the part you're not using off. And then when you get to the end, to cut the tubes apart. So yeah, he had it on him. Quite frankly, he put up with if he was like so eager to use that knife on somebody, he's just looking for somebody, which is kind of what the prosecution is, or at least some of the witnesses were trying to imply. He's just like looking for he brought that knife with him. He was looking for someone that he could put it in. No, I don't think so. I don't get that impression at all from from his friend that was a witness, from his own testimony, from his wife's testimony. I don't get that at all. I think he literally just brought it with him to use for cutting the ropes as he was asked. And he had quite a bit of restraint. All the taunting and everything that was happening, people in his face and everything like this, people yelling at him. He wasn't yelling back. I mean, they're saying he didn't talk. He did talk. I will pause the prosecution when we get to that. So let's keep going. But he kept restraint. He didn't pull the knife out right away until after they hit him.
And recall too, the DNA results, Isaac's DNA and Dante's DNA was the only DNA on the knife. They're also the last two that are stabbed. It makes sense from how the analyst described DNA and how it can wash off. You probably noticed throughout this trial, not a lot of witnesses come off looking great after they testify. There's some exceptions. Obviously, the Good Samaritans who went to aid Isaac and AJ. Eric Von Williams included in that from Nikolai's group. He's the only one who went to their aid. Sheena Lowell, you heard her testify from the Carlson group. You saw her just standing in the background watching what was going on the whole time. She was completely sober. You heard her testify, Nikolai punched Madison. She has zero connection with the group anymore, zero contact. Her and Quentin broke up. Tony is another one. He only comes in to break up what he thinks is a fist fight. He's directing Nikolai towards Nikolai's group. Nikolai turns and stabs him twice. Another one I submit to is an exception that acted admirably is Isaac. His death was tragic and horrific.
This is true. It was tragic. He shouldn't have been taunting a stranger. What if he had PTSD?
This is what you see of Isaac in the video. On the left, he's standing next to his tube, not moving away from his tube. He's pointing at Nikolai to leave. In the middle, when Nikolai turns back to Isaac, Isaac puts his hands up, fingers splayed. The only other thing you see of Isaac is him standing in the background. When the other boys are mocking, calling names to Nikolai, Isaac is just standing in the background. He's not saying anything. He's not doing anything. He's not jeering. He's just standing there holding their tubes. There's been a pretty serious mischaracterization of Isaac's actions with regard to when he gets stabbed. Defense has tried to classify it as a strangulation. Defense accused the state in openings of being selective in the photos we used, the frames, to try to show a certain narrative about Nikolai smiling. As you've seen, he's smiling a lot in the video.
We covered
But
that.
defense is actually doing that when it comes to Isaac. Nikolai never said anything about being choked, never said anything about pain on his neck. Even when specifically asked by the SART nurse, never mentions anything. And the video doesn't lie. So on the left, Nikolai has just stabbed Riley, who you heard from multiple witnesses were just standing there. Tony comes to try to break it up. Nikolai stabs him twice. Isaac, just off frame, I submit to you, he just saw Nikolai stab those two people completely unprovoked. Although he was in the background the whole time, not doing anything, he came to their aid. And he pushes Nikolai. You can clearly see it's a push. He has one hand on the arm, other hand on the chest. It's Nikolai's own action of thrusting the knife into Isaac's heart that moves Isaac's hands.
So this is where you can see his hands on his throat here, right? When I see the video playing, hey, I got to be honest. It does almost look like he's approaching him. He gets stabbed, and then almost like he's falling over or something. And I mean, the still picture definitely looks like he's got his hands there, like he's trying to strangle him. Of course, if you are being stabbed and you feel that pain, now you're in self-defense. And maybe you would be trying to like strangle the guy that just put a knife in you. Like I said, all five stabbings happened in less than 30 seconds. This is so fast. I mean, you can't even see his hands on his neck when the video's playing. It's only because it's a still shot that you can actually see it. For me, anyway. And the motion. So I do have to say, I have to be honest and look at it, as the possibility that it is the motion of like being stabbed. And like I said, they're kind of like, there's motion of them going together, kind of colliding. So there's that. Must look at all circumstance. Okay, no new. So let's keep going.
You can even see from the release, it's a push. He's not sitting there left holding his hands out in a choking motion.
But having said that, so I mentioned Isaac's position of like, okay, now he's in self-defense because he's got a knife going through his heart. He's going to die almost instantly. But Nikolai also is already in self-defense mode. He's in survival mode. He's just on survival instincts at this point. I mean, already, you've got this person coming and touching him, stab. This person coming, stab. Now one more person's putting hands on him, stab. What do we say? Our reptile brain is like our survival instinct thing. I mean, there's just there's no thought. There's no time to assess, is this person trying to help me or is this person trying to hurt me? No, at that point, every single one of those 13 people was trying to hurt him in his mind, in my mind. And if it was me, in my mind, every single one of them. Okay, let's keep going. Let's probably just do.
I'm going to show you the video
Okay.
so you can see it's
I can do it
obviously
tomorrow for defense.
While my computer is loading here, even if it was a strangulation, which it clearly isn't, Isaac was justified in using any level of force. He just saw Nikolai stab 2 people who posed no threat to Nikolai.
I conceded that.
Tony was breaking up the fight. He had actually ignored Nikolai at first, walked past him, pushed Dante out of the way. Riley was just standing there.
Son, whose father told him to go help, I think.
Met 2 minutes and 3 seconds. Can we have the screen?
So he survived because Isaac was one of the group of 6 boys. So he wasn't the one the father sent.
Clearly a push.
And that arm was his stabbing. There you have AJ, who was disemboweled.
Defense has mischaracterized the entire situation as 13 on 1, implying it's some sort of mob beating up Nikolai. It's not even 13 people yelling at Nikolai. As you saw in the video, Gabby, Janelle, they're just standing in the background. Isaac, he's just standing in the background, not yelling anything. It's 13 people in the proximity, only 2 close to him, 2 tiny females.
2 tiny females, doesn't call them adult women.
Nikolai's clearly not afraid of the boys. He ran up on the boys.
Calls them boys.
Turns his back on them and others multiple times. Even at worst, this is a 2-on-1 with AJ and Dante. But even then, as you saw in the video, Ariel's right there. So it's more like a 2-on-2. Ariel's right there. Plus, Tony comes in as a neutral party to separate things. It's not 13 on 1.
But let's say he's right and it's not 13 on 1. He's dealing with individual people at a time, stabbing individual people at a time. He was just surrounded by all these people and he was attacked. So in his mind, all of them are a threat. Because remember, did he feel in fear? Doesn't matter what the reality is, if he felt it. So if he's a liar, can we believe that he was in fear? Well, all I need to do is see that video and know that I would be in fear.
As soon as
Bruh.
AJ gets disemboweled, you see people start to move away. So it's not
You know, they wanted clout. They were all excited and taunting him, and the mob frenzy was building and building because they thought that they were going to put this video online and it would go viral. I mean, the video is kind of viral. I think more people have seen it now than if it had just gone viral as a taunting video. If this hadn't ended the way it did, if Nikolai did not have a pocket knife in his pocket, and they did release a video taunting him, that would be grounds for them to be in trouble. You know. Yeah. Didn't work out that way. And so we're here in this trial.
there's not even 13 people immediately around. You saw Owen way in the background because he saw the knife. So why try to mischaracterize the situation? Because there's some things that are hard to explain otherwise for defense. Turn on the screen, please. This is the second time you saw in the video that Nikolai turns his back on the boys and people from the Carlson group. You don't turn your back on somebody. It's common sense. You don't check your common sense at the door when you serve as a jury. You don't turn your back on somebody if you're afraid of them, especially if you're so afraid you got to reach for your knife. You can't be that afraid that he's got to reach for his knife and so unafraid that he turns his back on them. He was angry, not afraid. That image on the right is only less than 30 seconds after he turns his back on them, touching his knife. The defense tried to explain that.
I think this is when he got up after being hit. I mean, these two. When he's getting, I'm not sure on that, but he could be assessing the situation or whatever. His testimony, they went through all these pictures. The defense asked him what was happening here, what was happening there, and it all made perfect sense, in my opinion.
That change from in that 30-second window by saying he was getting pushed by Madison and Riley. He was getting pushed. They're lightly touching his arms, and they're tiny. They're not in his face. You can see in the images, they're standing close. They're not in his face. They're not shaking their fists at him. They're not even sticking their fingers in his face. They're standing close to him, touching his shoulders, pointing, yelling at him to leave.
But he, like I said, I mean,
I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about Nikolai looking for the phone.
Any touch, you don't know what's going to.
So Eric Von Williams from Nikolai's group, you heard testify, before any of this happened, he was concerned about Nikolai's behavior. He was concerned that people were going to think he was a predator. Ernesto told Nikolai not to go look for the phone. Others in the group told him not to. You heard they didn't care about the phone. Ariel didn't care about the phone. Nikolai went. Sandy said he went twice, was back for 5 to 10 minutes, then went again over by the boys. Defense argued in opening that the boys' goal, their goal was to humiliate Nikolai. Clearly, he wasn't looking for little girls. But the boys are not completely unreasonable in their belief. Eric Von Williams thought the same thing. They reacted wrong, but they just didn't invent this whole thing in order to humiliate.
I really like that he has admitted that their behavior was wrong. Thank you. Thank you for admitting that.
Nikolai. What about Nikolai? 52 years old, apparently sober.
I think he was 51 at the time.
According to, I think, what defense will argue, he didn't have any signs of intoxication when law enforcement made contact with him, but he certainly made a point of telling Lieutenant Hart multiple times how much he was boozing and drinking on the river. He can't let it go that he was insulted. So much so that as the boys are tubing away from him, all Nikolai has to do is stand there. He doesn't even have to take a step back. He just has to stand there, let the boys continue tubing.
I didn't see the. There were two boys in the tubes when he first came upon them, when he still had the goggles, and there's some point where he says like, "Oh, he didn't say a word." I'm like, no, he did, or maybe it was some other creator that was commenting. He didn't. If he would have just said, "Hey, I'm looking for a phone. Have you seen it?" Then all of this would have been avoided. I'm like, they obviously did not listen to his testimony because he did. It's just not part of the video. They didn't start recording it yet. But when he went up, he said, "Hey, I'm looking for a phone." You know. And so he did speak.
They're down in their tubes. He starts walking up to them, touches his knife, and then runs up to them.
Oh, well, if they're talking about him having the knife, they're not talking about when he first approached them. He's talking about when he had the knife. Or did he just like blend two different times together? Because nobody was in their tubes just floating, just let them go. Just let them float down there. No, they were all standing around him in a friggin' frenzy.
You heard Nikolai's ridiculous description or explanation for why he ran up on the boys. Because one was holding a phone. He thought it was Ariel's phone. You also heard Nikolai had to admit that pretty much everyone on the river had those phone cases.
Okay, so now we're back to when he was running up. And Nikolai said he never ran. It does kind of look like he's run, but he might be trying to lift his legs out of the water. So it might look like running, but he described that at that moment, like there were two boys sitting on the tubes, I think, the rest were standing. And so he approached them because one of them had a phone that looked like his friend's phone. And he wanted to ask them, "Hey, did you find that phone? Because my friend's looking for a phone." That's what he was attempting to do. I'm not sure he ever got those words out, but that's why he was approaching them about the phone. And then they say that he attacked them. We see him reach out on the tubes. I think he's falling. I think he lost his footing on a rock, he lost his footing in the river and fell and was trying to gain purchase as he fell. That's what it looks like to me. I could be wrong. But if you ask me, what do I see? I mean, what do we see? Oh, what does that cloud look like? Looks like a marshmallow. No, it looks like the Pillsbury Doughboy. What do I see? That's what I see. I see because he was walking fast, he tripped and he fell on the boys, the two boys that were on. Oh, he was trying to grab me. It's called flailing. You're flailing, That's what I think. That's what you guys are saying. Yeah, agree. Okay.
Another double standard from defense is physical attributes of those involved. They wanted to elicit evidence that Nikolai is feeble. He wasn't feeble according to Sandy. He had a surgery a couple years ago, recovered in a few weeks. Maybe things took him a little longer than they did before. He wasn't feeble according to Ernesto. You heard Ernesto when he was being asked about the stabbing, said he's
feeble. Let's define why they're talking about his quadruple bypass surgery that he had 2 years before, a year and a half before. It doesn't mean that he was feeble in normal circumstances, when he's at work, when he's tubing on the river, when he's looking for a phone with his goggles and snorkel. He's not feeble. However, someone who's got I believe he's got a pacemaker. I'm not sure. But even if he doesn't have a pacemaker, your heart rate is something that is significant. And you've got all these people taunting him. The fear is rising. Then you get beat up and thrown in the river, and you're in panic. You're in that panic/survival mode. And that can affect your heart. Okay? So don't give me this, oh, he's not feeble. No, his heart condition, the fact that he had a quadruple bypass surgery is a factor to consider. How was he feeling? And was he in a feeling of self-defense or not? That's what you guys are saying. Looked like he went down 2 or 3 times and then the knife. Exactly. Can we hear more? I can't. I mean, you're going to have to turn up your own volume. I can try to maybe like go back so I don't blast you. If you turn up your volume, mine's up all the way. I can only mute here. I can't adjust in the StreamYard, I cannot adjust the sound. Here, the sound is what you can see. It's all the way up. And let me check YouTube. The sound is also all the way up. Okay. So everything on my end is as loud as it can be, but I'll try to maybe stay back here. Is this a good volume for me? Oh, you want to hear more of what he's saying, as in play.
He's a big guy. He was in the army. He doesn't need a knife to defend himself. He didn't say, oh, he's this fragile old guy. He's clearly not feeble, as you see in the video. He runs up on these boys in the water. He leaves behind devastating injuries. Slices clean through 2 of Isaac's ribs.
That's scary. Slicing.
He comes out of the whole event essentially uninjured. While defense tries to clean through 2 of Isaac's ribs.
Isaac. So that's the one that he stabbed in the heart.
He comes out of the whole event essentially uninjured. While defense tries to.
Okay, I didn't get to hear the medical examiner's testimony. He did, I believe, jab, like that. Remember, 5 people in less than 30 seconds. We see, I mean, if we're watching the video, Isaac's kind of off. Isaac is off screen, but you can see his elbow. You can see Nikolai's elbow in the jab. How do you go? I mean, that's weird. That's weird to me. Here's ribs. I could see it going through, like as in between, and maybe nicking, but like breaking 2 ribs. That's got to be some, people like in extreme situations, they're gonna lift a car off of somebody, right? You get this strength. So maybe he had adrenaline strength. Because a pocket knife, you saw it, okay, 3 inches. It's like the blade was this big. I don't know. I'd have to watch. Maybe I will, like tomorrow or something, go through the medical examiners. 5 by 5. Okay, good. Sounds okay. All right, let's go.
Argue that Nikolai is this feeble old man. They ignore that the only 2 people actually standing close to Nikolai are these 2 females that are barely over 100 pounds.
2 females, not adult women.
If the boys are a threat, Why does Nikolai run up on them? And clearly he knows they're not a threat to him. When he ran up on them, grabbed their tubes, standing over them, they did nothing. They didn't kick up at him. They didn't punch at him. They jumped out of their tubes and moved away from him.
That's the moment that I was saying that I think he tripped and fell on them. That's when he still had the goggles and he drops the goggles, right? That's what he's talking about right here.
He knows they're not a threat to him.
And that's when they started really picking up their taunting.
They're mocking, saying cruel things, but not violent.
Wait. Okay. Let's go with you. They're mocking him. They're saying cruel thing, but not violent at that moment. Well, at that moment, neither was Nikolai. He wasn't violent either. He didn't get violent until after he got punched, thrown down in the river, punched again, and then pushed in the river. That's when he got violent. He wasn't violent. In fact, you bring out the point that he's smiling. Like it's a creepy, oh, I'm going to have fun doing this. I'm a creepy killer. So I'm going to have fun. I'm smiling. That's what they're implying. Is that what his smile is? I mean, it doesn't add up to everything else.
You saw how awkward it was for Nikolai to try to explain this transition. From 0 fear to 10 out of 10 fear, he's got to take out his knife. Try to explain it with what I submit to you is obviously rehearsed testimony about its scales of fear. You heard from witnesses recounting what they recall of Nikolai, the demonic look in his face, staring through people, smirking. Defense argued in opening it's a slide tour here, there. You know, after seeing the video so many times, that's not the case. When he's not glaring, he's smirking in the video.
Smirking or confused.
Recall, I asked Ernesto,
Up to
his
the
best
top.
friend, when he was trying to describe the shock of Nikolai. I asked, was he smiling? He didn't say, yeah, he smiles when he's scared. He smiles when he's nervous. He said, who's going to smile in a situation where they're in shock or in fear? Nikolai was angry. He wasn't afraid. He's smirking even as he's holding the knife. Why didn't he just walk away? Defense tried to argue there's rocks in the stable, his sandals were bad, didn't stop him from running up to the boys as they're tubing away from him.
But then,
why didn't he just hold the knife up? Say, hey, I got a knife, back up. You saw, Owen is the only person who saw the knife and you saw his reaction. So everyone else is moving forward and respond to Nikolai punching Madison. Owen's trying to pull people back.
So I do want to mention here, I've heard that in Wisconsin, as opposed to like Florida, that's the stand your ground state, and he's saying Wisconsin is not a stand your ground state. Well, I mean, but it is a self-defense state, you know. And apparently they have a law that if you have a weapon, any kind of weapon, that before you use it, you're supposed to say something that like, I have a this, I have a that, back off and don't make me use it, or something to that effect. You are supposed to alert the person that you have that. Now, he's from Minnesota. You're just going there to Wisconsin to go tubing. You're not going to know that difference. And you're not thinking about the law. You're thinking about surviving.
Next you see him, he's off in the distance. This whole thing would have ended if Nikolai just held up the knife. Instead of opening it down by his waist without looking down, because it's human nature, if he would have looked down, people would have looked down.
True.
He holds it down by his waist, opens it up, never displays it, or says he has a knife.
No, he didn't.
Nikolai did not act as any reasonable person would in that situation if they were truly in fear of their life or great bodily harm.
He did not act as any sane or reasonable person would if they were in that situation and in fear of their life or bodily harm. So you're saying I'm not a sane or reasonable person? Not that I would have had a pocket knife. you know, but I would definitely be in fear of bodily harm. And if I had something and there was nobody was helping me and I'm surrounded and there's this frenzy, and you have some kind of means, I don't know, it's for me, if I was a juror, it is sane and reasonable.
So let's talk. Here's Owen reacting, as you see. Again, Isaac just standing in the background in the middle. You see when other people are moving forward, Owen's trying to pull them back. You heard him yell, "Bro, he's got a knife." So let's talk about the punch to Madison. I submit to you the evidence shows clearly, beyond a reasonable doubt, Nikolai punched her. She fell backwards, but caught herself.
And I just want to say here, look at that look on her face. And he's like, I think this is the moment he's getting pushed down into the water. What? So if he is in survival mode, what mode is she in? She came over. She's not part of this group. She comes over. Get your effing away, screaming. We see her pointing and screaming, and the guy with the camera is going, "Who's that? Who's that?" Doesn't even know who she is. But she's got to get in the middle of it. You know, and he, in his testimony, said that he walked over to her because, oh, thank goodness there's another adult. They can help me with these 6 teenage boys. And he told her, I'm just looking for my phone. You know, I was just looking for my phone. But she starts screaming and just being like this. So that is somebody who has seen a mob frenzy starting and wanted to be a part of it and got caught up in the energy. I'm telling you, here in Cambodia, it happens. If a thief grabs somebody's bag, they're on a motorcycle, they grab somebody's bag, somebody knocks them down off their motorcycle, that crowd will come and beat them to death. And it starts with one punch, one kick, and then the mob frenzy just takes over and the person dies. It happens. And that's the dynamic. And so for every ounce of survival mode that Nikolai has, they have mob frenzy. And there's no doubt in my mind that he would have come to more bodily harm if he hadn't had that knife. No doubt in my mind. They wouldn't have stopped. My opinion.
Multiple witnesses testified to seeing her falling backwards.
Yeah, she had been.
The defense is saying, arguing on cross, well, she's not wet. She didn't actually fall down.
Yeah.
If witnesses are all standing in that kind of semicircle around Nikolai, she gets punched and falls backwards, and then their attention's back to Nikolai because Dante's hitting him. They're not going to see that she caught herself. They're going to think she fell down.
Okay, so yes, Mumsy, everybody but one person in the adult group, I'm not talking about Nikolai's group because they're not right here yet. In fact, only one of them I think does eventually come over and actually ends up helping. Nikolai walks back, so they must have crossed paths or something, and Nikolai's group ends up leaving, but one of them stays behind helping, like medically helping. Everybody else, all 6 boys and everybody in Maddie's adult group, were all drunk, except for one person who says she was the designated driver or whatever. there was one person designated to be sober. Everybody else, yeah, was using something. There was something else I wanted to mention with what he was talking about. I'll just pause it again.
Look at her position next to Riley. Her shoulder.
Okay, so the punch. Was there a punch or not a punch? The video captures so much of everything going on. It does not catch whether or not he punched her. You will hear if tomorrow we do the defense closing statement, then they kind of go into this a little bit. But during Nikolai's testimony, he said he put his hand like that because, okay, to get the timeline for you guys, the boys say that this punch happened first, then they attacked him. So the attack of him falling in the water happened after he punched Maddie. All right. And then he got his knife, and then the stabbings happened, right? What he says that she was this close to him, right, in his face, and he put up his hand like this, like to stop her. Now, did that touch her? Possibly. But there's no video. And I believe there is some of her like losing her balance a little bit, but she didn't go down. So, and every witness had a different account. Some were saying he punched with his right hand. Well, he didn't have a knife yet. So wait, because they were saying he's got the knife in his right hand, so how could he punch her with the right hand? So see, this is confusing sometimes. But they do. They go back and forth about like, did he punch her or did he not punch her? And then I would say like when as well, because I think, I'm not sure the order of the stabbings, but it seems like he might have stabbed them first and then stabbed the guys. So that punch, see, they're saying she got punched in the face. But if he stabbed her, then that might look like a punch if they didn't realize he had a knife. Let's let him go.
Shoulder to shoulder in front of Nikolai before the camera pans away. When the camera pans back, now Dante's shoulder to shoulder with Riley, and Maddie is back. She clearly got knocked backwards.
Yeah, she clearly got knocked back.
Her sunglasses aren't on her head anymore. Defense has a double standard about that too. If there's not a photo of it, it didn't happen. If there's not a photo of an injury, it didn't happen. We know Nikolai got punched. He didn't have any injury. Defense can't have it both ways. So I'll turn and talk a little bit about memory, credibility. Obviously, a witness's memory is better closer to the event. That's obvious. Alcohol is going to affect memory. Traumatic events going to affect memory. How fast it happens is going to affect memory. But crucially, and absolutely crucially, there's a huge difference between getting some details wrong, right hand, left hand, sequence of events, and making up an entire story like Nikolai did.
Yep, he did. And he admitted it, that he
Defense has tried to highlight throughout the trial, Nikolai was in this traumatic experience. Give him a break. It's understandable. He made up all these lies.
Okay, so I don't think it's a case of give him a break. I think it's a case of, according to the law, at the time of the stabbings, did he fear for his life? Whatever he did after that could be stupid, could be manipulative, could be conniving, but it doesn't matter. It's not give him a break. It's that it doesn't matter to the law. Was he in fear for his life when he stabbed those people? Because he stabbed those people. That's not at question here. You know, and Andy, yes, you're right. A group or mob can be lethal. And who knows what he's had. He came to America as a teenager from Romania. What was it like? And he's 51. He's like us. So this is what he's a teenage. You know, I'm 56. So he's a teenager in the 80s. What was Romania like in the 80s? That's when, remember on TV when we're growing up, and there's all this TV about the orphanages in Romania, and they were asking people to adopt babies because the orphanages were so bad. You know, what happens in countries where there's not enough food and there's not enough jobs and things aren't going well in your country? Gangs and stuff and pop up. You think it was easy growing up in Romania and then coming here as a teenager? Who knows what kind of trauma he has? You know, that as long as he's in a safe environment, it doesn't bubble up. But when you get back to that primal fear, that instinct, you know, yeah, they had a gang mentality. I'm sorry, but I don't have any. I'm not going to say they deserve it. I'm not going to say that. But do I have sympathy for them? Not so much. I'm sorry that they had to experience what they did. But I also can recognize that they brought it on themselves. I'll tell you the story. I was a waitress. I was in my 20s. I was a waitress at Denny's. And my manager was at the cash register. And I came up behind him and I just did this little boop like that on his waist. Boop, you know, just to tease him. He turned around and was like, "Don't ever do that. I was in Vietnam." I was like, whoa, okay. I wasn't even like taunting and teasing and ganging up on being a bully. I was just being a friendly, like little tease. Boop. You know, the like the level of tapping someone on their shoulder, but then moving to the other side so that when they turn, you're on the other side. Like that kind of thing. But in this day, you don't know what's going to trigger somebody. So they had no business behaving the way they did. In fact, Nikolai has a lot more grace toward them than I do. He says, well, they were just being kids. I wouldn't say that. No, that is not correct behavior for kids. I'm sorry. It's not correct behavior for anyone to be a bully. Some people can't be touched. Exactly. If they're thinking he's a little bit off, what if he's got some kind of autism on the autism spectrum? That's not ever been brought up. Okay. I'm just saying, if you see someone and you think they're a little bit weird, you know, because bullies like to pick on people that are weird and that are geeks and that are nerds, you know. So if they sense he's a little bit off, what if he was autistic and can't be touched and then he goes berserk? You know, maybe he doesn't have a knife in his hand, but he goes berserk, right? And then they're like, whoa, what happened? I could imagine that. This could have been a kid. This could have been a girl. This could have been anyone. Doesn't matter that it was Nikolai that they were taunting, because these guys taunt. These guys are a pack. These guys are their own little gang. You know, they're jocks. They're the cool kids at school. You know, and it's not acceptable. And that's, I mean, how many kids, what's the suicide rate for kids that are killing themselves over being teased and bullied? I mean, this is a big issue. This is bigger than just Nikolai. How did the boys get the booze? Great question, Mumsy. Bullies are bullies. Exactly. If you're not a bully, you don't act like this. The very fact that they're acting like this, I can judge a tree by its fruit. Their fruit is telling me that they're bullies. Let's see if we can get through this prosecutor's closing statement. Let's see. Prosecutor. Okay. So we're like halfway through. You ready for another hour tonight? I'm on a roll. I'll stay with you tonight.
Told this whole story. Even though he looks calm and collected in the videos, he's convincing in the videos, talking to the sheriff, talking to Lieutenant Hart. But don't give any sort of credence to the theory that trauma affects memory for anyone in the Carlson's group, any of the boys, any who were stabbed, any who had to drag Isaac as he's bleeding to death to the shore. AJ, who's disemboweled, don't give any credence that trauma might affect their memory and how accurately they can remember all the details. But Nikolai, who invented an entire story, tried to skip through the crowd. Give him credence for that.
They're all caught in lies.
You saw what happened to all these witnesses, how fast it happened. It's not surprising. Some of the details are wrong. But the major point is accurate, is consistent. This all started when Nikolai punched.
This is, you see the yellow shorts? He's the one that gets disemboweled. So this is the moment that he's disemboweling him. And it's, when you see the video moving though, it's, his hand is so fast, it's in, out. So there's some amount of him falling over that like rips up, I guess. Because you see his arm in, out. One time. On Isaac, you see it 2 times. This is AJ. And I don't know, is that Riley and Maddie? Because that doesn't look like blonde hair anymore. You know, it hasn't been clear to me like where the girls are when they get stabbed. That hasn't been clear to me. I'm going to play this and I'm going to like run to the restroom. So I'm going to take my video off for a second, but like keep this playing.
Punched Madison, whether it's the right hand or left hand.
Who was filming this? One of the 6 boys is filming this.
You heard the turmoil of the boys when they realize Isaac is stabbed. Clearly a traumatic experience. There's a big difference between details and invention. Think about the most basic example. You and say your partner go to the grocery store. Park your car, you're leaving the grocery store. You think your car's parked over there, they think it's parked over here. You still know the car is parked in the parking lot, even if you can't remember where it's parked. The same is true for the punch to Madison. You heard from 10 people, both from the Carlson group and the boys group, that Nikolai struck Madison. So let's talk a little bit about witnesses from Nikolai's group. Ariel, what did he say? At trial, he says Nick defended himself. Can't really say how. Never said that when interviewed with law enforcement. He denied even being close to Nikolai. Remember, Ariel was there when he stabbed Dante. He was right there when Nikolai stabbed Riley, Tony, and Isaac. Law enforcement went there with the frame of Ariel standing next to Nikolai when Nikolai has the bloody knife. Ariel denies seeing anything to law enforcement of what Nikolai did. Ernesto, at trial, testified he didn't see Nikolai get hit, just saw him down in the water. Said he couldn't remember Nikolai saying, "They took my knife." You saw on the body cam, he said that repeatedly. He testified that somebody was walking towards him, he pointed at him, "Get back." Never said that to law enforcement, although he did describe to law enforcement, as you saw, him saying, "Nikolai, get out," Nikolai walking out, and then he said, "And that's it." Never said anything about anyone pointing at him and walking towards him. When I asked, he said, "I wasn't asked that question." But he described that event. He also wasn't asked more than 10 times if Nikolai said, "They took my knife." So, about the punch to Madison again. Sergio, he's in Nikolai's group. He had walked out a little ways. You can see him in the photo on the left, in the top right. He had the white shirt, white bucket hat. He testified he saw the blonde girl in the black leotard walk over to Nikolai and say, "Go, go, go." He said it repeatedly to law enforcement. And he said Nikolai pushed her. So this is what it would have looked like from his perspective, although a lot farther back in that photo on the right. How could he have seen Nikolai do anything to Madison unless she got pushed back, punched back, something violent, not some light push? He's not going to see that from where he was. Madison testified, and you saw in the video, after she was hit, she goes back to her group. Why would she walk away back to her group if Nikolai just lightly maybe touched her, maybe didn't? She told Quentin she was punched. She told police at the scene she was punched. She told police in the interview she was punched. She testified about feeling the throbbing pain in her cheek, her heartbeat in her cheek. Maddie testified she was told by law enforcement, sheriff's office, they didn't need the photo. You heard about that misunderstanding. She had anxiety about deleting the photo. In an effort to console her, she was told, "Don't worry about it."
It's okay. You can see kind of sandy color.
This is an important jury instruction in your jury instructions. Although we're not a stand your ground state, there's also not a duty to retreat. But in determining whether Nikolai's actions, whether his use of force was reasonable to prevent or terminate the interference, you may consider whether he had the opportunity to retreat with safety, whether such retreat was feasible, and whether he knew of the opportunity. He turned his back on them multiple times facing open water. People were yelling at him to leave, to walk away, to go. And he didn't. Instead, he took out his knife. That is not reasonable.
So I just want to comment that, yeah, everybody was lying to police and to the, there's so many lies afterwards about whatever. There's no video of whether she was punched or pushed or hit or whatever. There's her stumbling, I guess. I'm not sure which scene. I wish they would have like a screenshot of her stumbling or something, but because everything happens so fast. Yeah. So it's a he said, she said, as far as like what kind of contact he had with Maddie. He obviously stabbed her. So there was at some point a contact.
You heard from Sheena Lowell, Janelle Duxbury, Gazi Khazri and Nazimpour, Dante Carlson, and AJ about the strike to Madison. You heard from the boys, Ryan Nelson, Juwan Cockfield, Landon Weyer, and Alex Vang.
Love you, Mumsy. I'm so glad that you've been enjoying this. I'll do another one tomorrow. I'll set things up to do another one tomorrow night. So we'll finish the prosecution and then we'll do the defense tomorrow. Or maybe the jury will come. Maybe because it's daytime right now, the jury's deliberating. They could come back with a verdict.
Alex Bing originally described it as lab. We heard from Owen that he heard an impact and saw Madison fall back and catch herself. Defense has to argue that they're all either lying or mistaken. All these witnesses, including Sergio. If they're lying, why would Quentin say I saw some swelling and some slight redness, but didn't see the punch? Why wouldn't he just say, yeah, I saw the punch too? Why wouldn't Tony say he saw the punch? Why wouldn't Tony say he saw Riley get stabbed and she's just standing there? They tried to explain what happened as best.
He goes on and on about the punch. But yeah, Chalet, it's very possible that they come back with a verdict today. I don't know. I think they might have a lot to talk about. I'm leaning towards tomorrow at some point on Friday that they would come back. It depends. The jury is actually very well rounded. There's like 2 people from their 20s. There's someone from their 30s or 40s or 50s, and then there's a lady that's 90 years old. So if they're all of the same mind, I don't know. There's a big spread there. It's including the 2 alternates. There were more men than women, but I think both alternates that were told to stand aside, but to stay ready in case something happens and they do need to step in. I think they were both male. They didn't turn off the thing fast, the sound fast enough. They actually said the name Daniel. Because they were reading the names of, they were starting, the judge was saying the names of the 2 alternates, and he said Daniel, and then click, and then they got the button. Oops, but we don't know his last name, so he's still private, I guess. But yeah, who knows if they come back today or it's very possible they come back today. I mean, yeah. I'm wondering if the 20-somethings are going to like side with the kids, But I'm glad they're on the jury. They should be on the jury. There should be a couple that are younger. And so it might take some explaining about, but the lying, they lied, but that's not, we got to look at the moment the stabbing happened. Doesn't matter why they lied or whatever. We can see with our own eyes what happened, So
They could remember.
Who knows?
The punch isn't on video, but you see the reaction. You hear Dante yell, "You can't hit a woman," before Riley is stabbed. They obviously didn't plan this lie in the chaos of the moment. So the only thing defense can argue is they're mistaken. That all these people standing around Nikolai in that half circle, proximate shape.
What did he just say? What did he just say? They were standing around him in a half circle. Oh, I thought that he was able to, he could just walk away. Why didn't he just walk away? Yeah, they were mobbing him. Okay. And he doesn't have eyes in the back of his head. He doesn't know exactly where everybody is,
They're all looking in that direction, including Sergio, including Sheena, who was by the group, the tubes for the Carlson group. They all were wrong in what they saw. Another defense double standard, it's relatively minor, but I submit to you it shows that they're grasping at straws, is this trying to put Nikolai's group in a different category. there's the drunks on the Apple River, then there's Nikolai's group. About half of you raised your hand that you've been on the Apple River. That's what people do on the Apple River. They go out, they tube, and they drink. Nikolai was in the exact same boat they were in. He wasn't bird watching and this group of drunk teenagers ran up on him. He knew what it's about. He'd been on the river before. Another thing about the punch to Madison, you heard that they didn't get to see the video before giving their statements. Even Jawan, who took the video, said he got far enough to get the screenshot of Nikolai, and then law enforcement took his phone. He didn't get to see the video. You saw what happens in this case if somebody lies about something that happened on video, because Nikolai got burned by that. He made up complete and total lies. Video showed he wasn't telling the truth. The video happens to not show the punch, but it still corroborates what all those witnesses said. So, count 6 is battery to Madison Coleman. It has 4 elements. Nikolai caused the battery to Maddie, or caused the injury, the harm, the pain. She testified to that. He intended to cause the harm, despite his denial. I submit to you that's clear. You don't punch somebody without intending to cause harm. She didn't consent. She testified to that. He knew she didn't consent. She's a stranger. Obviously, she didn't consent. He knew that. Punching Madison was not self-defense. Again, there's no duty to retreat, but you have to consider the opportunity to retreat, knowledge of the opportunity to retreat, and whether the use of force was necessary in preventing the unlawful or the interference in Nikolai's person. So what is the interference at the time he punches Madison? The boys are saying cruel things to him. Maddie and Riley are standing in front of him, lightly touching his shoulders. People are pointing and laughing at the boys. They're not, Maddie and Riley aren't in his face. They're standing close, but they're not in his face. What amount of force was necessary to prevent that interference? People yelling at him, Maddie and Riley standing close. What amount of force was necessary? Absolutely zero. Just walk away. That's what people are yelling at him to do, just walk away. Instead, he takes out his knife and punches Madison. Regardless of whether you were convinced beyond a reasonable doubt it was a punch, Nikolai essentially admitted to pushing her. Sergio said it was a push, although when asked, he couldn't remember if it was a push or a punch. There's still provocation. Your jury instructions talk about provocation and how that affects self-defense. Person may not use or threaten force intended or likely to cause death unless he or she reasonably believes he or she has exhausted every other reasonable means to escape or otherwise avoid death or great bodily harm. Remember, Nikolai ran up on these boys who were tubing away. They didn't run up on him. He ran up on them as they're tubing away from him.
Okay. We're talking about provocation. Did he have a way to escape, etc.? But now he's going back to when he had the goggles. The only time he ran up on the boys is when he had the goggles and he thought that one of the guys had the phone. So he was going up there to see if there was a phone. And in my opinion, he tripped and fell on the 2 boys that were in the tubes. That's the only time he was running up. He wasn't in fear, self-defense mode at that point. I would not say that. He didn't run up on them to stab them. He's talking. I could be wrong, but it sounds to me like that's the point he's talking about.
Because they insulted him. He was angry.
I don't see any anger.
He didn't walk away from the boys to leave the situation. He went over to Maddie, who was yelling at him to leave, and he lies to her and says, "They took my snorkel."
Okay, either he didn't say anything or he did. Right there, we have him saying something. They took my snorkel. I think, though, that in his testimony, he said that I was looking for a phone. He might have mentioned the goggles and the snorkel, too. But in the moment, he lost them when he tripped and fell. We see, it looks like he puts them in his mouth to hold on his mouth, and then we see them falling away. Did they slap the goggles out of his mouth? Did he open his mouth and they fell out? Don't know. But obviously, he's talking about the running up and then going and telling Maddie that they took the goggles. So he's talking about that first time.
I'll play that for you so you can hear it. All right, this is at 105 in the video. I'm ready.
Go to the kids, go! Go! Go to the kids, go! Go! Go to the kids, go! Go! It doesn't matter.
You didn't.
If you ask me, at that point, he's looking like confused and not knowing what he should do at this point, in my opinion.
You can take it down. He didn't go over there to extricate himself from the situation. He went over there and accused the boys of taking the snorkel, which was a lie. And he had just ran up on the boys. So after he runs up on the boys as they're trooping away, he goes and tells Maddie they took my snorkel. He's standing there smirking at people, takes out his knife, either punches or pushes Maddie. That's provocation. Defense has zero reasonable argument, especially when it comes to Tony, Riley, Isaac, and Dante. Nikolai gets punched. He gets struck with an open hand twice. He gets ineffectually pushed by AJ. It doesn't do anything. Nikolai pops right up and disembowels AJ. After Nikolai goes down in the water, nobody approaches him. Nobody. Nobody goes to kick him. Nobody goes to punch him. Nobody goes to push him again. Tony, with Nikolai down on the ground, Tony walks by Nikolai with his back to Nikolai, yelling, "Get back to Dante." He turns around to tell Nikolai to get away, and Nikolai turns around and stabs him. Nikolai was facing his group with an open path of escape after provoking a reaction. He just stabbed Riley before stabbing Tony. After stabbing those two, he stabs Isaac. After that, after Ariel's there, he walks over to Dante, stabs Dante in the chest, right below his ribs, right below his heart. So self-defense, I submit to you, the state has proven.
So we just got some clarification in the time, in the order of stabbings. He said Riley had gotten stabbed, then he stabbed Tony, then he stabbed Isaac. No, I'm sorry, AJ. And then Isaac. Right? Is that what he just said? But Maddie also, I thought Maddie also got stabbed. Let me go back just a little bit.
With Nikolai down on the ground, Tony walks by Nikolai with his back to Nikolai, yelling, "Get back to Dante." He turns around to tell Nikolai to get away, and Nikolai turns around and stabs him. Nikolai was facing his group with an open path of escape after provoking a reaction. He just stabbed Riley before stabbing Tony.
So he stabbed Riley, and then he stabbed Tony.
After stabbing those two, he stabs Isaac. After
Isaac.
that, after Ariel's there, he walks over to Dante, stabs Dante in the chest, right below his ribs, right below his heart. So self-defense. I submit to you, the state has proved.
So there's one stabbing missing, which is Maddie. So when did he stab Maddie? Before he stabbed Ariel? Because the two of them were standing in front of him at the same time. Could that be the punch? The punch that was when he stabbed her. In which case, like, when did that because I thought that they're all talking about a punch, hey, Mama Katie, before they attacked him. And I'm pretty sure he didn't stab Maddie before he attacked them. I mean, before they attacked him in the water. They punched him and he's down and they're pushing him into the water and all that. I'm pretty sure that's when he got his knife out. Because if she had been stabbed, then she would have been, because once the stabbing happened, everyone's screaming. And there is a little bit of time between when he goes down and they're punching him and he gets back up and then the stabbing starts. And then they start screaming. Right? So, because Maddie's one of the attempted murders. What do you guys think? He's not a very good lawyer. Yeah.
We're going to be on a reasonable doubt.
He's okay.
This was not justified self-defense, and Nikolai knew it. He knew it from the moment he did it. First of all, imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. He's not in an alley with no way out, with people blocking his exit. He's on an open river, 150 feet wide, people yelling at him to get away. None of them are armed. Punch, 2 open hand strikes, ineffectual push. Look at the definition of great bodily harm, whether he reasonably believes death or great bodily harm is imminent.
I would be believing that. It was me.
For attempted first-degree homicide for Dante, AJ, Tony, and Riley, the state has to prove that he intended to kill each of them. And the acts demonstrate unequivocally, under all circumstances, that he had formed the intent and would have caused the death of each of them, except for the intervention of some other person and an extraneous factor. Third, the defendant not actually believed that the force used was necessary to prevent death, imminent death, or great bodily harm. So for the intent to kill, but for outside circumstances. AJ, it's beyond clear. He would have died but for the blood in the helicopter. He would have died but not for the surgery Dr. Meyer performed. He is lucky, extremely lucky to be alive.
Let's talk about the one that was disemboweled.
What else was Nikolai's intent but to kill when he slices him up like that? He had the knife blade up. That wasn't an accident. He didn't not know. The first thing he does with it is slice up AJ's stomach.
The judge doesn't even buy it.
Riley, he slashes across the ribs. You saw the horrific nature of those wounds. He cut into her stomach, cut into her diaphragm. Luckily, he didn't hit any major arteries or her heart or lung. Tony blocked one stab, so Nikolai stabbed him again. The one he blocked, you saw the injury, was very close to where AJ's artery was severed. Dante was stabbed again, just below his heart. But for Nikolai missing vital organs, but for medical intervention, You claimed he had tunnel vision.
You're Kathy.
Oh, sorry, back up. So Dr. Meyer also testified you heard about
Kathy.
anytime there's a puncture wound to the torso, stomach, they have to go in because there's so many major veins, arteries, organs. They have to go in and make sure something major isn't done. Nikolai killed Isaac, almost killed AJ. Riley needed emergency surgery. Luckily, but for dumb luck, he missed the vital organs of Dante. But for AJ blocking one strike and missing vital organs, he survived. Nikolai said he had tunnel vision. I thought everyone close to me was attacking me. I thought anyone touched me was attacking me. He didn't stab Ariel, and Ariel came up. It makes the tunnel vision claim a little bit unconvincing.
I thought he did stab Ariel.
For first-degree intentional homicide of Isaac Schumann, Nikolai stabbed him so hard he cut clean through 2 ribs. The wound was deeper than it was wide. He sliced Isaac's heart. There's no other intent when you stab somebody directly in the heart than to kill. An intent to kill doesn't need to be planned ahead of time. Your jury instructions talk about that. It doesn't have to be formed a week, a month, a day, even a minute in advance. As long as he had that intent when he does the act, that's intentional homicide.
Okay. Fair enough. But I don't think he was trying. I mean, yeah, you're surviving. You're just trying to get the pack of wolves off of you. Does that make sense? And I could be wrong, but I think if it was me and I had the knife and I was stabbing this pack of wolves attacking me, I would just be trying to get them to back off. And I don't know if it's going in a heart or not. Does he have any military training? He's an engineer. When he was in Romania, did he learn when he was a teenager? Did he learn about how to kill people? And this is how you get their heart? I think he was just jabbing. Myself, I mean, what I see in the video, it looks like he's just jabbing and not caring where it goes. But yeah, that's fair enough. That intent does not need to be planned. So the jurors need to ask themselves, what I see, what evidence I have seen and heard, once that knife was in his hand, was he using it to kill them or to just get them to stop and protect himself so he can get away? The jury's gonna, that's a burden. That's a great burden on the jury. You keep looking at his face. She's like, what? He's like, what? It's a guy. He's like, whatever. Yeah. And then he had all of them against him. Yeah, we see that.
The first element is he caused Isaac's death. That's obvious. Acted with intent to kill. I've addressed that. Did not actually believe the force was necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm. I'm going to get to that in a little bit for all the counts. Third element, he did not reasonably believe the force was necessary. That also goes to, I'm sorry, that's part of the third element. So how do we know, what Nikolai believed? What a reasonable person would believe? That there's only one person on the planet who experienced what Nikolai experienced, saw what he saw, was standing in his place. And what did Nikolai believe? He believed it was unjustified. The very first thing he does is walk away, doesn't run, doesn't tell Ariel or Nestle anything, doesn't tell them to run. He walks away from his group to the other side of the river. At some point, rinses the knife because it wasn't covered in blood. Throws the knife onto the bank before walking back to his group. Says nothing to his group other than they took my knife. Puts on his hat, sunglasses, and shirt, and sits down in his tent. He's the one, as he said in his interview, who says, let's go, let's get out of here. They can't right away because Eric isn't there. You saw, and as they're tubing down the river, you saw the video of him casually paddling along. You saw, so plan one, get away. Slink away with the crowd. That didn't work. Plan two, play down. Can you take the screen down, please?
Yep. I think, okay. They're going to show the, like, when he was first with the police have him sitting in the car. They're still at the river. They haven't arrested him yet. They're trying to sort things out, and he goes, oh, well, what happened? You know, oh yeah, I saw something happening on the river, but I don't know what it was and everything. Yeah, he's playing dumb. You just stabbed some people. Okay, yeah, you're in a certain amount of shock from all of everything that just happened. Has anyone ever been in a situation where they've had adrenaline and then how you're shaking? At first you're shaking. And then when it finally goes down, you feel drained, right? So he just went through this experience. He knows that he stabbed them. He's probably scared of the police and what they're going to think. Maybe he thinks that okay, they bring up the point he didn't know that there was video, right? So, yeah, maybe he thinks they're not going to be able to know it was me. That seems a little, because even if there's no video, the kids would be able to pick you up out of a lineup, right? And the other adults, that's the guy, right? So even though he hasn't had the video, I don't think he's that stupid. Everyone's talking about how smart he is as an engineer. He speaks 5 languages, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But he probably is, for right now, I'm just going to play dumb, and then when that doesn't work, he lies. All right. But does any of that have any bearing on whether or not he feared for his life at the time the stabbings occurred? For the jury to decide. I think this is like enough of the end here. Let's see. You met some pretty interesting engineers, smart at their job, but in the real world, they don't have the street smarts always. Yeah. Totally get that. So I think this is enough to wrap it up. You get the gist of everything that he's been saying, and tomorrow we'll continue and look at the police. I'm sorry, the defense closing arguments. It was good. Thank you. I enjoy bringing this to you. I enjoy being. Oh, you know what? I just noticed this whole time. I should have had this up in the corner instead. Oops. Yeah. So, let's do it. Let's do it again tomorrow. I don't know if you guys are busy on your Friday morning, my Friday night, but I hope you'll be available to join. So before I go, let me just say that love transcends time and space. So wherever and whenever you are watching this, I love you. So yeah, we'll talk about it again, and maybe we'll have a jury verdict as well. If there is, we'll see. Do we need to go through the defense comments or not? We can, and maybe see what was it that convinced the jury. Was there anything that they said that convinced them, or that didn't convince them? Depending on which, it could even be a hung jury. Well, we'll just have to see what happens. But so same bat time, same bat channel. I'll see you then. Bye.